I'm Patrick Sutherland. I was a student in Newport between 1978 and 1979. The course then was a one-year diploma run by David Hearn and John Charity. I remember talking to my dad about going to study documentary photography. He was terribly concerned I'd get bored photographing documents. It's rather ironical, I just applied for a grant to do that, to photograph documents. But I applied for the course anyhow, and came down to an interview, and the bastards rejected me. And I think that was a kind of clear sign that really I should do something kind of more sensible, something more financially stable, get a job as an estate agent or something. But when I came down to interview, I was shown around the department by a student called Kevin O'Farrell, and Kevin showed me his contact sheets and his work print, and he explained the whole philosophy and methodology of the course. The assignments, man at work, relationships, all those assignments we all went through. And I think I understood that this was a really remarkable program and was very keen to undertake it. So I phoned up the department a few weeks later, and I got through to John Charity, and I said, I'm really keen to do the course. You know, what can I do to kind of increase my chances of getting onto the course next year? And John said, if you're that keen and you can find the funding, you know, come and join the program. So I managed to weasel my way onto the course, and I'd like to say that it was kind of, you know, brilliant and plain sailing from that point onwards. But actually, I found it a real struggle, and I'm not a kind of particularly natural photographer, I don't think, and I was quite shy at the time, and I found all the assignments and the intensity of the course really quite challenging. So most of my photographs, particularly in the first part of the course, were pretty awful, and I wasn't really sure that I was going to be able to hack it as a photographer. But at some point, I took some photographs in a Chinese chip shop in Newport, and I showed them to John Charity, and he was quite enthusiastic about them, made me go back and reshoot, and I managed to produce 2 or 3 pictures which were kind of personal and quirky and meaningful. And I think this was a kind of light bulb going on for me. And what I think I discovered on the course, I discovered 2 or 3 things on the course, but very clearly I knew I wasn't going to be a photojournalist. I had no kind of real desire or drive to work for newspapers or magazines. I wanted to work on my own kind of much slower, long-term documentary projects. I wanted to work, you know, to my own rules and to my own timetable. But I think the other thing I discovered, which I think many of us found, was that documentary photography gives you this extraordinary, very privileged role to be able to go into situations where you don't really have any right to be in, and more importantly, to stay in those situations. And I think this is the kind of the magical and transformational kind of realization that we came to doing photography. And I think this has had a major role kind of in my life. John Charity also introduced me to the work of James Revilius when I was a student in Newport, and James Revilius's work showed me the kind of the possibility of working on long-term documentary projects in England and perhaps surviving as a photographer doing this. And this is a major influence on my first project and my first book. So the course, the philosophy and the methodology and the thinking of the course, which I have to say was, you know, very radical and very innovative, that whole process of teaching through undertaking those assignments, through that kind of embodied way of learning, that was very much sort of David's thing. And I think that, you know, that's a unique kind of contribution to photographic education. But for me as an individual student, John Charity was the person who had the most sort of influence on me. I think John was particularly good with working with students who weren't naturally high flyers, and I wasn't. And John is an instinctive socialist, a democrat, and a great believer in the sort of transforming potential of education. And I think he helped me hugely in the process of becoming a photographer, not just on the course, but also when I was trying to kind of establish myself afterwards and trying to get grant-funded projects off the ground. So I think John, you know, should be celebrated for his role in teaching documentary photography. He should be canonized for his role. I think he's, for me, the most energizing and influential teacher I've ever experienced. So I think he should be canonised for his role in teaching photography. Actually, when I think about it, you can't be canonised if you're still alive. So maybe John should be fired out of a cannon across the Usk at low tide.